about a heaven in Alberta, where they've got all hell for basements. Yeah, I lost my way, but I hear tell about a heaven in Alberta, where they've got all hell for basements.
Hi, everyone. Frankie here. New West Reset. Hello. Howdy. How's everybody doing? Thank you very much for shooting in, joining a fella here for another one. I had it muted at the beginning for a few seconds because there was an ambulance going by, and then I remembered, what am I doing? What are you doing, Frankie? It's tradition now that you get the sirens going by in the background. Anyway, thanks for joining me here. Thanks for again your patience with shifting around. We're back on our normal time slot schedule here, which is, of course, Friday. And lo and behold, here we are. Friday, July 19th, 2024, just a little past 5 p.m. local time, mountain time. And as always, we're coming at you from Cowtown, Sandstone City, Calgary, Alberta, up in Canadian land. Right here, Purdy, Alberta. So I trust everybody's doing well. Hope you're doing all right. Yeah, it's hot. I'm just getting it right out of the gates with the pissing and moaning about the weather. Because I'm Canadian, eh? So that's what we do. That's pretty much all we got to talk about, eh? That and hockey. And while there's no NHL hockey on right now, eh? In terms of games, anyway. Gonna just talk about the weather. It's hot, man. It's been in the low to sort of high 30s Celsius here for, I think, going on 2 weeks now. That's in the high 80s, low 90s Fahrenheit. Well, there's another ambulance. There we go. There it is. That's fire engines. There's fire somewhere. Anyway, I don't know who would be having a fire with it being 32 degrees Celsius right now, but hey, man, it is what it is. It's like 90-ish, 90 something. 90s, low 90s Fahrenheit right now. Woo, it's hot. It's hotter than Billsia Bob's balls. Anyway, thank you for joining me. I hope you're not sweltering where you are. But conversely, what am I going to say? I'd rather it be plus 32 than minus 32, I guess. I don't know. Anyway, thank you for joining me. Thanks for kicking off your weekend here with yours truly. It's Friday, don't you know? So you know what that means. What does that mean, you may ask? Well, it's New West Reset Live. Episode 75 here tonight on the show. So good evening to you. Good afternoon. Good morning. Good night, whatever the case may be. For this episode, we are going to be looking at the Storied Saga of Sam Steele. So in the meantime, if you haven't already, give a fellow one of these. Say hello to a guy in the chat there in the box. Let me know where you're shooting in from. Let me know how you're doing. And if you're not aware, well, this just kind of came to me actually a couple of days ago, and I was actually talking to cousin Vinny about it yesterday. Yeah, yesterday. And we were talking about Sam Hill, which is a English slang euphemism for referring to hell or the devil, as in what in the Sam Hill is going on around here. But I often say Sam Steele. What in the Sam Steele is that? And then it occurred to me, wait a second, if you're not a Canadian, you probably don't even know what I'm saying. Like I'm just that's Canadianish gobbledygook up there that he's talking about. And even some Canadian knuckleheads might not even know who Sam Steele is. That may not have even heard the name. I mean, most of us kind of sort of have if you're of a certain age. Did a little bit of learnings in the school. As, again, mind molding, but be that as it will, or as it may. So I thought, well, heck, I'm going to do me a show about Sam Steele because he's quite the storied character, to say the very least. As is often the case, right? When you go digging around and rooting around, like an oinker looking for truffles, right? You often get to uncover some truffles. You might uncover some other stuff that you weren't necessarily looking for, or a few surprises, anyways, not for anything else. Anyway, thank you for joining me. Thanks to everybody who's already subscribed and shared. Thank you to all of you who are tuning in and watching this shenanigans after the fact. Really appreciate you. Thank you. Thank you. And I see we got Hippie Shake in the box. Howdy, Hippie. Good to see you. Chassis Nix is here. Hello, Chassis. As well as Kathy Childers from Kentucky. Howdy, y'all. Howdy, Kathy. Yeah, well, technically my usual regular time slot, I guess, 5 p.m. Mountain Standard Time, right? But yes, what was it, last week? It was 7 p.m. local time, so that was late for a lot of people. I don't usually like doing that. I usually try to get somewhere where, as many of you can jump in and join the shenanigans as possible. You know what I'm saying? Right, Title? Turtle's here, everybody. Good to see you, Title. Thank Gorsh, it's Friday. Hello, Tartarian Prague Rocker in the box. Kimmy is here as well. Good to see you, Kimmy. DN, howdy. How's it going, eh? It's only 86 in Kentucky. I guess for Kentucky, that's, sort of ish, not too hot, I guess. But then you tack on the humidity, right? Because that's the first thing that people say here. If you just, typical, going to the corner store to get some milk or whatever and pass a neighbor. And I say, hot out today, eh, bud? And he'll say, yeah, but it's a dry heat, eh? Shut up. It's still hot, okay? But, yeah, when it's humid too, 86 is pretty hot. That's about, low 20s Celsius. I mean, it's getting there. Jabberoo Joe's here for a sweat and knuckle presentation. I don't even know what that means. Realm Dweller in the box. Howdy. I'm still baffled, befuddled, and bamboozled about this. I don't even know what sweating knuckle is. I mean, I'm going to be doing a lot of getting myself worked up into a frenzy. Oh, you are so funny, Cousin Vinny. Hilarious. What are you, some kind of smart guy over here? Huh? course, always good to see Cousin Vinny because, you get Cousin Vinny and you get Frankie Fingers here on the New West Reset show.
So, Tommy, where have you been, huh? I've been watching New West Reset. Huh? Oh, it's New West Reset. It's this thing on YouTube. He goes around, he does his boots on the ground thing. They'll tell you.
Say you care.
That's right. Sam Steele, Fort Steele. A lot of stuff named after Steele, Sam Steele, spelled that way and so on and so forth. And who's it now? See what I'm saying? Yeah, I've heard Sam Hill too. What in the Sam Hill? Which then why even add the Sam, right? Because if you could Google it on the goggle machine, it asks you, oh, did you mean Sam Hill? And then it tells you what Sam Hill is. But Cousin Vinny and I were saying that we've both heard it as both as well. Sam Hill, Sam Hell. It's so that people who don't want to curse and use foul language now, you see, they could say, what in the Sam Hill is going on around here? Huh? And nobody's going to be, oh, poop mouth. You got yourself poop mouth, right? But if you're going to say Sam Hell, you might as well just say, what in the hell is going on around here? But I've heard both. Absolutely. But I like to try to keep it with the Canadian content up here, bud? So I try to say what in the Sam Steele is going on as much as I possibly can. Even this Canadian doesn't know what the heck you've been saying. Really? With the Sam Steele? Actually, I'm not surprised, right? I'm shocked, but not surprised. If that makes sense. There's a band called Sam Steele, so if also that muddles and muddies the waters a bit, in terms of, looking and finding anything. Anyway. So yeah, welcome to the show, episode 75. The Storied Saga of Sam Steele here at New West Reset Live. Links, of course, as per usual, down in the rectangular shaped box below there. As well as, speaking of links, my Google Maps is there. All the places that I've hit up for boots on the ground here in Calgary and other outlying areas. As well as BitChute, MeWe, a feller's email, if you want to, I don't know, send me a line, share some photos or some ideas, or hey, if you just want to say, howdy, Frankie. How y'all doing over there in Cowtown, Calgary, Alberta? Purdy, Alberta. And of course, the Fighting platform, where we're broadcasting simultaneously live right now. So shout out to Realm Dweller over there on the Rumbles. Howdy, howdy. So links for all that there shenanigans below, as well as a feller's PayPal, if you feel so inclined. That's there really for people that have, speaking of email, have emailed me and said, hey, Frankie, how can I contribute to the channel? And, the best way is to, engage with the guy. Say hello in the comments, like, subscribe, all the stuff you hear a million times from a million other channels. You know what I'm saying? But hey, you want to throw a guy a couple of pennies or silver dollars. Lovely. It goes to the channel. It pays for road trips. It pays for, microphone pop filter. A new mouse for the desktop. I have a job, so I'm not going to take your donations and, go out and buy myself a new Gucci wallet or something stupid like that. Anyway, thanks for joining me here. Appreciate it as always. I'm going to check right now because I got your message asking if I got your email, which I had not at the time, and I had let you know that I had not received your email. I'm looking now, and I still have not. I got an email from George Prokopenko sharing some stuff. George sends me stuff about once, twice a week, generally speaking, photos or video or both. I'm showing a reply from Vaughn to an email I sent him. And from Cousin Vinny, from Jabber Joe, from Mark at Our Melted Reality, and from Chris at Old World Exploration. And that is, yeah, that's that, Kathy. That is very strange. Try again later? Yeah, well, please do. Yeah, please do. In fact, let me, I mean, it's correct on my page. You know what I'm saying? But let me just put it in the... Oh, now I'm really asking to be spammed. But I'll put it in the chat as well. I'm just double checking the spelling on everything in the description box below my videos and streams. And yeah, it should be right. Yeah. newwestreset@gmail.com. So, yeah. All right. Hopefully. Good luck. We'll keep our fingers crossed and our... Let's see. Can I cross my other fingers? Can I... Oh, that looks like I was at some kind of horrific accident or I'm from some other planet. But anyway, other planet. Get it? I'm an alien. No, no such thing. Anyway. Old World, Michigan is in the box. Good to see you. Howdy, howdy. Can't hear the audio. Take off. Really? I can hear it. I can hear myself. I can hear my own self. Maybe you accidentally muted your screen, your YouTube screen. Although I'm keeping a close eye on everything because with the temperature being what it is, sometimes the interwebs gets hinky, even though I'm plugged directly in. I'm not using the Wi-Fi thing. A guy's not a fan of the Wi-Fi. Ah, there we go. Okay. Yeah, well, and there's, I mean, I've made no secret that, you know, and even the algorithm catches you if you complain about, you know, the addo-anning, you know. You know, if you take that word and, you know, you get the anning with a B in front of it, then, yeah, you know, yeah. And I've had problems exchanging emails on the Goggle Mail with Old World Exploration in the past, where I have sent him either an email or a reply to one of his emails, or vice versa, and it hasn't shown up or sometimes takes days. And really, it should be just lickety-split, right? Clickety-click, Barbara Trick for all you Canadians out there that remember that cartoon. So yeah, I think that's what Chris, what Old World Exploration does, is he uses a different email provider, and that also can cause, I don't know, you know how it is. So yeah, well, but you know, I appreciate your efforts. Thank you, Kathy. Appreciate it. Anyway, so speaking of links below to everything we're going to be covering tonight on the show as well. We're always, you know, as per usual, going to look at the Wikipedia version of things, because really, aside from maybe going down to the public library and finding and signing out a book or two about old Sam Steele, which I wouldn't have a problem with, but this is the quickest condensed version to get, you know, sort of the official narrative of the story, because you know, I just casually, there we go, that's easier, just casually perused some of the information, and even just what I was kind of looking over quickly, just in kind of a 45-minute period as opposed to hours of digging. I was like, wait, what? Is there anything that this guy was not involved with? And so again, it's almost like, well, you know, They take 11.4 million historical events and they attribute it to one or two dudes. And that's that. Well, that could be it too. Generally, my vintage footage videos that I upload, every Wednesday, shameless plug, shameless self-promotion. Every Wednesday for your midweek, I do the vintage footage videos. Find old-timey film footage. And I edit it into a video that's about the length of a song, and I pair it up with a song that maybe has double entendre hidden meanings or, below surface level meanings to the lyrics. And generally, I try to use a Canadian band. And I upload that video. Now, I get a copyright claim, but I don't get a strike. And it says that it doesn't affect my channel. But I think it does because my channel's not monetized. So whichever band or artist I use isn't able to wet their beak, maybe, perhaps. So then, the algorithm likes to kick me between the legs. I don't know. I don't know. But yeah, I mean, I've heard that, right? I've heard stuff like that. So Phil says, have not seen Terry in a while. Vincent saying, yes, we miss Terry. Yes, we miss Terry Light. But when last I heard from her, which wasn't that long ago, a couple of weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, maybe, in an email, gardening right now is top priority. And as you know, if you got a green thumb, timing is everything with the gardening, right? But yes, shout out to Terry Light. Hopefully she's doing all right and hasn't gotten a sunburn or something. Yikes. You know what? I'll send her like a creepy online stalker. I'll send her an email after the show just to say, hey, howdy, how's it going? Yeah. Scott Pike in the box says, once you know who owns Goggle and Who Tubes, and know who's been behind both WWs, most likely the other reset event. Yeah. Yeah, it's a very select few in the inner circle or the top of the pyramid, or whatever you want to look at it. Powers who should not be, right? Which is funny because there's not many of them, but there's, from at least what they tell us, billions and billions of us. But somehow, right, they get us with they dilute our brains with all kinds of tactics, immoral tactics, amoral tactics. Jabberoo just, you almost got, I'm like, wait, did she start a New West fan club? And then I'm like, nah, this guy's he's just taking the piss. Tell her that her New West fan club misses her. Maybe is she the Madam President of the New West fan club? There's no New West fan club. Take off, eh? Quit pulling a guy's leg, eh? Because I was going to say, if there is, I mean, now I just feel bad for you. Because, I mean, you got to up your standards on whose fan club you should join. I'm playing. I'm just clowning. I appreciate all of you. So thank you for being here. And then we hear from Vaughn tonight. Australia having outages, really power outages. Huh. I mean, as per usual, there's, wacky stuff going on, right? Toronto had some flooding there a couple of days ago. Pretty bad, too, a couple of feet. But it wasn't due to, this kind of a freak rainfall. I mean, there was more intense, and I think volume-wise, slightly more than usual with the rainstorm they had. But it's their whole infrastructure, right? It sucks, right? Because you get a bunch of, again, powers who should not be up at the top calling the shots, and they just funnel stuff, and they don't direct, the funding to where it should be, like, flood mitigation and better infrastructure. They probably had a good infrastructure. Toronto was an old world city. I mean, before it was called Toronto, it was called York. And before it was called York, who knows what it was called? an old world city here in North America, in Canada land. Pre-reset city, or many parts of it. I mean, obviously, they've gotten rid of a lot of that. In my personal opinion. So there's probably some pretty kick-ass old world infrastructure in there, but no, they got to fart around and screw all that up. Anyway, so thanks again for joining me. And as mentioned, links below. Hey, we might as well just start off with, we're just talking about Sam Steele. See who the heck this fella is. You know, before we get into too deep into the weeds here. What in the Sam Steele is going on around here, Sam Steele? Major General, Sir Samuel Benfield Steele. Born January 5th, 1848. Died January 30th, 1919. Was a Canadian soldier and policeman. He was an officer of the Northwest Mounted Police, head of the Yukon detachment during the Klondike Gold Rush, and commanding officer of Strathcona's Horse during the Boer War. Strathcona's Horse is a division of, it's an armored regiment of the Canadian Army. Anyway, early life, he was born into a military family at Medante Township, province of Canada, now Ontario. Back when Canada was before Canada land. He was the son of Royal Navy Captain Elms Yelverton Steele. Look at this guy here. Yeesh. All right, fancy guy. A veteran of the Napoleonic Wars and one of 6 brothers to have served in the British Armed Forces. His mother, which was his father's second wife, oh my, how scandalous back then, Anne MacDonald, was the youngest daughter of Neil MacLean MacDonald of Ardnamurchan. Ardnamurchan? I do not know. A native of Islay. What? Scottish family branch of large clan MacDonald. Islay or Islay is the southernmost island in the Inner Hebrides of Scotland, known as the Queen of the Hebrides. I'm sorry, I do not know. This is the first time seeing this. It lies in Argyll, that I've heard of, and Bute. Northern Irish coast. Okay, that's capital is Balmore. Okay. Neil MacDonald's grandson of Captain Godfrey McNeill of Barra. These guys. And a nephew of Colonel Donald McNeill. Steele's named for his father's uncle, Colonel Samuel Steele, who served in Quebec under Lord Amherst. Steele received his education family home, Purbrook, and at the Royal Military College of Canada. By the age of 13, he was orphaned. Oh, there you go. And went to live with his elder half-brother, John Steele. So, by the way, this is not confusing at all. Again, when you're trying to research this kind of stuff, right? Because he's named after his uncle. It would seem to me that that would make it easier for them to attribute accomplishments or historical benchmarks of some sort by his uncle to the nephew, to prop up or beef up or boost up the nephew in whatever narrative they choose to serve and put or associate with this, this Sam Steele, which we're going to get to as we get further in the weeds here. So following his family's military tradition, in 1866, he joined the Canadian militia during the Fenian raids. First joining the 35th Simcoe Battalion of Infantry, and after moving to Clarksburg near Collingwood. I don't even know where that is. Oh, Niagara area. Clarksburg is Southern Ontario-ish area. Okay. Steele also participated in the Red River Expedition. basically, yeah, there's a bunch of military dudes that the Prime Minister sent to try to quell a rebellion in the River region of Manitoba, eh? Much to his disappointment, he arrived after the Métis had surrendered. Oh, it's too bad I didn't get to kill any Indians. The following year, he joined the Permanent Force Artillery, Canada's first regular army unit. Steele had long been fascinated by the West, devouring the works of James Fenimore Cooper in his youth. Some guy that depicted, he wrote books about Indigenous peoples during colonial times. Okay. He was especially interested in the First Nations. Spent much of his time in the West learning from them in the Métis. Oh, so he maybe wasn't disappointed that he got there after they surrendered, that he didn't get a chance to go to war with any, but maybe that they were already taken captive and whisked away, and then he gets there and, they're gone. I wanted to talk to them folks. Maybe, I don't know. Spent most of his time in the West learning from the Métis. However, he was assigned to Fort Henry in Kingston, man. Nope, Kingston, Ontario. Kingston, eh? For the next few years. As an instructor, the artillery school. In 1874, Steele was initiated as a fellow traveler. Eh? Yeah, one of our buddies, the old Masons of the Freeze. I don't know. The Freemasons. In the Lysar Lodge No. 2 in Selkirk, Manitoba. It's only got 10,000 people in it now. How many people did it have back in 1874, I wonder? So life as a Mountie. I'm going to try to move through this as quickly as I can and skip some stuff because, I mean, there's just lots to see here. But some of it doesn't really apply to what we're going to be talking about on the show. But, of course, as usual, links below there, eh? So if you want to grab your virtual shovel and do a little more digging your own self, it'll be there for you. So in 1873, he was the third officer sworn into the newly formed Northwest Mounted Police. He was the third officer sworn into the whole thing. Well, yeah, he was there pretty much from the beginning, I guess. Okay. Entering as a staff constable, he's one of the officers to lead the new recruits of the Northwest Mounted Police on the 1874 March West. When he returned to Fort Garry, present-day Winnipeg, Manitoba, eh? Okay. So to him fell the rank of Staff Sergeant Major and responsibility as an accomplished horseman and man-at-arms. Drilling the new recruits in 1878, he was given his own command at Fort Qu'Appelle in the Northwest Territories. What was then the Northwest Territories, though, which was everything basically northwest of Assiniboine, which was northwest Saskatchewan, almost all of Alberta, and almost all of British Columbia. But yeah, here's where we start getting into this guy who was just involved in everything. So in 1877, he was assigned to meet with Sitting Bull, who, having defeated Lieutenant Colonel George Armstrong Custer at the Little Bighorn, had moved with his people into Canada to escape American vengeance. Steele, along with the U.S. Army Major General Alfred Howe Terry, attempted to persuade Sitting Bull to return to the United States. Most of the Sioux had returned a few years later. During the Northwest Rebellion, Steele was dispatched with a small force, missing the Battle of Batache. Oh, darn, another one. Guy's no luck with skirmishes, eh? He wants to get in there and throw the fisticuffs with the wild Indians, or I don't know why he's chomping at the bit to fight. But anyway, the Mounties were sent to move against the last resistance force led by Big Bear. There's Big Bear. He was present at the Battle of the Frenchman's Butte, where Big Bear's warriors defeated the Canadian forces under General Thomas Bland Strange. Wait, what? This guy's name was Tom Bland Strange, known as Gunner Jingo. What? Okie dokie. Nothing to see here. Moving along. 2 weeks later, Steele and his 24 Mounties defeated Big Bear's force at Loon Lake, district of Saskatchewan, in the last battle fought on Canadian territory. Contributions to the Northwest Mounted Police putting down the rebellion went largely ignored and unrewarded, to Steele's great annoyance. Yes, give me glory. By 1885, Steele was recalled to Calgary. Hey, that's where I live. Where he was tasked with organizing and commanding the scouting contingent for Major General T.B. Strange's Alberta Field Force. Steele's scouts performed well. There's still a group here as in the Alberta militia known as the Steele Scouts, which led to his promotion as superintendent after the rebellion. My daddy knows some of the current day Steele Scouts, is why I know that. But anyway, he established a Northwest Mounted Police station in the town of Galbraith's Ferry, which was later named Fort Steele, British Columbia. After Steele solved a murder in the town, he then moved on to Fort Macleod in Alberta. So he's just zipping and dashing and diving back and forth between Alberta, BC, Alberta, BC, Alberta, BC. Oh, we're going to go to Ontario for a while, then Alberta, then back to BC. Oh, then I'm going to go to Saskatchewan for a bit. Like, this guy's everywhere. Everywhere now. Old World Mi'kmaq in the box. Quainidap. So this guy's bebopping and shooting and shucking and jiving everywhere. In 1887, Steele was ordered to take D Division to southeastern British Columbia, where the provincial government had mismanaged relations with the Kootenay Nation of Indigenous First Nations peoples, to the point that violence was threatened. Steele's men built Fort Steele on the Kootenay River, and he resolved the situation through patient diplomacy with Chief Isidore. So they just pulled into town because they're having problems with the local indigenous Canadian Indians. And they will build a fort, and then we'll resolve the issue using diplomacy. Yeah, it's easier to talk diplomacy when you've got a fort that you supposedly built just suddenly that you can, point rifles at, or point rifles from, I should say, at whoever you're negotiating with. Anyway, the division returned to Fort Macleod in the summer of 1888, and Steele commanded that post, the largest outside Northwest Mounted Police headquarters in Regina, Saskatchewan, for the next decade. In 1889, at Fort Macleod, he met Mary Elizabeth de la Pion Harwood, daughter of Robert William Harwood. They were married at Vaudreuil, Quebec. That's now part of Montreal, in 1890. They had 3 children, including Harwood Steele. They did not name one of their sons Harwood Steele. Take off. Why would you do that to your child? I mean, it's fine, right? You think when he's a kid going to school, kids aren't that bad. Nope, kids are terrible. Make fun of that kid, bully him. Oh, your name's Harwood Steele. Give him a good pounding. Give me a break, man. Oh, it's fine, though. It's only, like 5 periods of classes during a school day back then. It's like 5 beatings a day, 5 days a week. It's not too bad. The kid will be fine, I'm sure. Kids are resilient. The discovery of gold. Oh, wait a sec. They had 3 children, including Harwood, who fictionalized episodes of his father's life in novels such as Spirit of Iron in 1929. Okay, so let me read that again. They had 3 children, including Harwood Steele, who fictionalized episodes from his father's life in novels. So again, when does art imitate life and life imitate art? And again, it's, to me, that's a red flag that it makes it easier to start messing around with official narratives. Oh, that's just a story. No, that really happened. Or that didn't happen. Yeah, it did. Or vice versa. Just muddying the waters. Muddying the waters. Anyways, the discovery of gold in the Klondike in the late 1890s presented Steele with a new challenge. Although he campaigned unsuccessfully, excuse me for my Freudian slip there. Although he campaigned unsuccessfully. I did it again. Let me just get it out. Although he campaigned unsuccessfully amateur hour here. For the position of assistant commissioner in 1892. In January 1890, he was sent to succeed Charles Constantine as commissioner and to establish customs posts at the head of White and Chilkoot passes. All right. So you discovered gold in the Klondike. Wow. I need to have a sip of my drink here. I'm having operator error with my lips, mouth, and tongue. Delicious. All right. So they discovered gold up in them there hills. And they said to Sam Steele, there's Americans going back and forth between the American and the Canadian border there up there to try and get to gold. So we might gonna have to put customs office up there so people don't just, go shooting back and forth willy-nilly. Because, all them Americans are bloodthirsty to grab all our good Canadian land all the time now, since 1812 and even further back, supposedly. So we better keep an eye on stuff. I mean, that's why they'd say that the Northwest Mounted Police was formed and sent out west, was to keep an eye that Americans didn't try to scoop up the prairie, what we now call the Canadian prairies in British Columbia. Among other dastardly things, apparently. So they sent him up there, and he was the successor to this Charles Constantine police officer. So he was noted for his hard line with hundreds of unruly and independent-minded prospectors, many of them American. To help control the situation, he established the rule that no one would be allowed to enter the Yukon without a ton of goods to support himself, thus preventing the entry of desperate and potentially unruly speculators and adventurers. How is a prospector or a miner, a gold prospector, supposed to be able to transport a ton? Now they're talking about literally a ton. You got to have a ton's worth of food, clothing, and shelter to even cross the border up in here now. It's like, I ain't got me nothing but a pan and a mule and a pickaxe. How am I going to carry a ton of stuff? My mule's pretty strong, but there ain't no way my mule's going to carry a ton of stuff. So then it's like, well, I better get another feller to help me. Whoa there, not so fast there now, eh, buddy? We got two fellas there with you, so now it's 2 tons, eh? So, this guy's a hard ass, supposedly. Steele and his force made the Klondike Gold Rush one of the most orderly of its kind in history and made the Northwest Mounted Police famous around the whole spherical world, which ensured its survival at a critical time, as the force's dissolution was being debated in Parliament. Capitol Hill in Canada land, that is to say. By July 1898, Steele commanded all the Northwest Mounted Police in the Yukon area and was a member of the Territorial Council. As the force reported directly to Ottawa, Steele had almost free rein to run things as he chose, always with an eye towards maintaining law, order, and Canadian sovereignty. He moved to Dawson City in 1898. Speaking of Dawson City and the midweek vintage footage videos here on Wednesdays, I recently uploaded some video of Dawson City from the 19-teens, I believe. So this guy's just rolling an iron fist up there at the Klondike Gold Rush. So then, he's a Boer War and second military career. Always a soldier in early 1900s, Steele leapt at the offer of now get this, the Canadian Pacific Railway tycoon Donald Smith, Baron of Strathcona, to be the first commanding officer of Smith's privately raised cavalry unit. So this guy is a railway robber baron in Canadian history. But he's been allowed, because he's the Baron of Strathcona, he's allowed to assemble a private cavalry unit as a branch of the Canadian military? and then recruit a cop who was a former soldier. Wait, what? Can you wait? Huh? Like okay, he left at the Canadian Pacific Railway tycoon Donald Smith to be the first commanding officer of Smith's privately raised cavalry unit, Strathcona's Horse, predecessor of the modern armored unit, Lord Strathcona's Horse. I don't.
What?
All right. I guess back then you could just raise private armies and recruit cops and stuff. Hey, cop, you want to be the head of my private cavalry unit? Who the hell are you? I'm Baron of Strathcona, don't you know? He's like, well, okay, no problem then, eh, buddy? I've just never heard anything like that before in my life. Anyways, with the appointment as a lieutenant colonel from March 7th, 1900, this Canadian light cavalry unit in British Imperial service. Oh, so they leased themselves out to the crown. Okay, well, sure, I guess. Was sent to South Africa during the Second Boer War. Oh, so it wasn't even it's a Canadian light infantry cavalry unit, but it's not even in defense of stuff going on in Canada. It's just to ship them off to Africa for the Boer War. The Second Boer War. Remember, he was also supposedly in the First Boer War. Or was that his daddy? Or was that his son embellishing? Anyways, the Second Boer War, where Steele commanded them with distinction in the role of reconnaissance scouts. Steele, however, apparently disliked greatly what he was ordered to do by the British, which included burning towns, farms, and homesteads, killing livestock or the Boer families, and moving the populace to concentration camps. Killing livestock of the Boer families. That's my mistake. After the war, the regiment arrived in London in 1901. Here he met Lord Strathcona for the first time. He was presented with medals by King Edward VII. During a visit to Buckingham Palace, Steele was also appointed a member of the Royal Victorian Order, a personal gift from the king. On his return to Canada, the regiment was disbanded and the officers received honorary promotions. Steele was promoted to honorary lieutenant colonel on March 1920. By the way, if you're wondering why I keep saying lieutenant when clearly it's spelled lieutenant, it's because I'm Canadian, and that's how we say lieutenant. We say lieutenant. Just like they would do over there across the pond over in the UK and whatnot. This guy's getting awards all over the place. Like, for a guy that was so successful with all of this and even stuff before this, why was the Northwest Mounted Police teetering on the brink of being shut down? It's very strange to me. Anyways, after taking the unit back to Canada in 1901, Steele returned to South Africa the same year to command the B Division of the South African Constabulary, excuse me. A position he held until 1906. On his return to Canada in 1907, he assumed command of the Military Division No. 13 in Purdy, Alberta, and the District of Mackenzie. And then in 1910, he assumed command of Division No. 10 at Winnipeg, where he spent his time regrouping Lord Strathcona's Horse and preparing his memoirs. Oh, I'm going to get the old fellers back together, and then I'm going to retire and live off the selling of my memoirs, or I guess, who knows. He requested active military duty upon the outbreak of WW1 in August of 1914. This guy is just chomping at the bit to fight and shoot and choke and and stab and slash and wreak havoc. He was initially rejected for command on the grounds of his age. You're too old. However, a compromise was reached, which allowed him to act as the commander of the 2nd Canadian Division until the formation was sent to France, whereupon he would be replaced. After accompanying the division in England, Steele was offered an administrative post as commanding officer of Southeast District. Matters were complicated, however, when the Canadian Minister of Defense, Sam Hughes, insisted that Steele also be made commander of the Canadian troops in Europe. A slight problem is there was 2 brigadier generals who each believed they were in command. The issue wasn't resolved until 1916. 2 years. Boy, let me tell you, the military of the Commonwealth back then was a highly oiled machine, wasn't it? Top drawer stuff, top shelf. Tickety boo there, everybody over there with your. This is ridiculous, man. Ridiculous. Anyways, when the new Minister of Overseas Military Forces of Canada, Sir G.H. Parley, removed Steele from his Canadian command after Steele refused to return to Canada as a recruiter. I know, I ain't doing it. So he said, all right, well, I'm just going to remove you then. He kept his British command until his retirement in 1918. While in Britain, Steele was knighted. This guy can do no wrong. On New Year's Day, 1918, and was made a companion of the Most Honorable Order of Bath and a Knight Commander of the Most Distinguished Order of St. Michael and St. George. This guy's just getting pats on the backs by queens and brigadier generals and lieutenant governors left, right, and center. Sig's in the box. Howdy, howdy, welcome. Dragon Sage is here as well. How's she going there, eh, buddy? Yeah. It does. It really does. Yes, please do. Please do, Chassis. I hope that catches on. What in the Sam Steele is going on around here now? Yeah. This is crazy. Anyways, Death and Legacy. Steele died during the 1918 Spanish flu pandemic. Panda bears. The coof. The old world coof. Excuse me. Pardon. Just after 71's birthday. He was interred at the Cathedral of St. John's Cemetery in Winnipeg. Canada's 5th tallest mountain, Mount Steele, is named after him. CFB Edmonton, that's Canadian Forces Base. Used to be HMS CFB, but now it's just CFB. The home of Lord Strathcona's horse. Yep, right here in Alberta is Lord Strathcona's horse, the Royal Canadians. It's now called Steele Barracks. So there you go. Links in the description for all of that shenanigans regarding Sam Steele. Yeah, that very good point, Scott. Scott Pike in the box saying the medals show who he's working with. Yeah, if you can even with a cursory level of knowledge, like the fancy word usage, by the way, but yeah, even with the cursory knowledge of what some of those symbols mean or who they represent in terms of nefarious groups and brotherhoods, shadowy, occulted orders and whatnot, then it's like, yeah, okay. I see who was putting coffers in his pockets. You know what I'm saying? Anyways, let's see what else I got here. I found this funny article when researching this. Apparently and I just want to say right up front, Canada from coast to coast to coast. The marijuana is legal. It was legalized a number of years ago now. So this article has to do with Canada land up here, and the sticky icky. Okay, but apparently there's a marijuana dispensary store in British Columbia. I know, big surprise, British Columbia and the Mary Jane. Yes, of course. They're famous for it. But anyways, apparently a dispensary had an image of Sam Steele in their window. And, well, let's take a look at the article here, because this is ridiculous. This is from cbc.ca news, online CBC News. So again, take it with a grain of salt because this is a Canadian federal government funded broadcaster, and therefore, well, salt required. Needs a little more salt. The Royal Canadian Mounted Police say an image of famous Mountie Sam Steele used as a BC potshop window covering violates its trademark. The Royal Canadian Mounted Police have a trademark on their uniform because it has nary changed in over 150 years. The red coats with the braided golden lapels, the brass buttons, the Lord Baden-Powell hat, you know what I'm talking about, the Boy Scout, the old-timey Boy Scout hat, the Smokey the Bear hat. You know, that's basically been the status quo uniform for a long time. So it says they violates their trademark. But owner of Jimmy's Cannabis Store. Well, hey, you're going to buy some cannabis, you might as well get it from a guy named Jimmy. Anyways, he plans to keep the image up, and as a historian, says Steele isn't even wearing the Mounties uniform. Okay, first of all, so this guy owns a cannabis store, and he's a historian. That should be an historian, by the way. There should be an N there. It should be and as an historian. Anyway, that's just proper English, eh? Even as a knucklehead like me that's already brutalized the king's tongue. Even I know that it should be an historian. But anyway, the trouble started for Jimmy's owner, Jeff Weaver. The guy's name isn't even Jimmy, it's Jeff. Maybe his name's Jimmy Jeff. But anyways, on Thursday, the day the new Cranbrook store opened, Cranbrook, British Columbia, there in the Cranbrook, in the Okanagan? Nope. Fraser Valley. When a local RCMP officer paid a visit and asked Weaver to remove the image of Steele. So a cop just walking by said, hey, get the picture of Sam Steele, our beloved Sam Steele, out your dang filthy, damn dirty hippie pothead window now. Well, that's the thing, right? He's a historian. He probably got high and did his research and was so thorough that he was just like, no, I know what I'm talking about, right? And, well, we'll get to it. So Weaver said he initially planned to do as he was asked, as he meant no disrespect, and intended the image in part as a tribute to the RCMP and their history in the area. Yeah, kind of a big deal through the Rockies and all in through that area. All of Western Canada, right? But he soon had second thoughts. He was like, no, you know what? That cop was kind of a knob, eh? I'm going to show him. As he balked at the cost of replacement. About $1,000 just to remove the image. I'm assuming it's applied on with some kind of, it's like one of those vinyl glue images that you stick on the inside of your window. So the image surface, where they print the image, is also sticky, and you apply it on with like a squeegee device. And so it's got to be peeled off, and he's got to have something else printed and put back on. So yeah, hey, let's face it, fledgling business, $1,000 is $1,000, eh? So he decided, I'm going to reconsider these guys. You know what? So he's a University of Alberta now they get a third party involved. Now a University of Alberta professor emeritus of history and classics who has written a recent biography of the legendary Mountie is weighing in on the issue, claiming the image in question doesn't even depict the uniform. So he's not even in a Mountie uniform. According to Rod McLeod, author of Sam Steele, a biography, the uniform of the mustachioed Steele is wearing on the cannabis store window could not have been that of the Northwest Mounted Police, a precursor of the RCMP, as Steele is sporting multiple medals on his chest that were earned during his work in South Africa after he left the cops. So he's wearing his Boer War uniform with the pith helmet with the little pointy, whatever, tech, weird, boop up there. But anyway. So the RCMP kept the iconic red serge uniform, replete with blue pants, the yellow stripe, and the tan Stetson hat that was developed by the Northwest Mounted Police in the late 19th century. Steele left the Mounties after 1899, according to MacLeod, and became commander of the new Lord Strathcona's Horse, which fought the Second Boer War, Southern Africa, yada, yada, yada. They both used a red tunic. Aside from the color, doesn't stand out as unusual for a traditional military uniform. They both include blue pants with yellow stripe, and members of the Lord Strathcona, yada, yada. So the uniforms are similar. But he's saying, while the uniform's similar, there's certain telltale decorations, especially when they look at the original photo compared to the stylized version that was in the window. So he's wearing the uniform. It's a British issued uniform from the Boer War. Even though technically he's a quote-unquote Canadian soldier, but he's under the Commonwealth. So it's a British uniform from the Boer War that he's wearing. MacLeod said the only medal Steele would have worn as a Mountie was awarded after his participation in the 1885 Northwest Rebellion. In the image, he's decorated with 6 medals. How many medals did this clown get? So the name, image, and marks RCMP are protected under intellectual property laws of Canada. Permission must be obtained in any protected marks. In this case, no request was submitted, said the cops. Because the RCMP are prohibited from engaging in or being portrayed in any way that could give the impression that we're advising or endorsing a private individual or business. So they're not allowed to, the image is not allowed to be used to endorse anything. You can't have a Mountie holding up a McDonald's burger, giving the thumbs up and saying, that's tasty. Come on into McDonald's there, eh? Get yourself a nice McDonald's burger there, eh, buddy? They can't do that. So I thought that was pretty interesting that the cops just rolled in on this pot store. So I'm going to stick it to these filthy, filthy hippies. But I have a follow-up. This from a, I was going to say maybe slightly less reputable website, but actually no, with the other one being an official Canadian government website, this one might actually be more, what's the word I'm looking for? Legit, for lack of a better term. This is from the growthop.com website, Cannabis News. Yeah, fine. Get this out of here, man. What, now I gotta... Now, all of a sudden, now I gotta say that I'm, now I gotta put in my birth date. I already did this when I bookmarked it, dang it. Why are you messing with me here now? Okay. This should be working now. All right, here we go. Oh, come on, baby. Why are you playing with me? All right, let me do this, and then I'll get back into it here. Just because this is stupid. This is silly. Silly. What in the Sam Steele's going on here now? Yeah, I'm over 19 for Pete's sake. For the love of Pete. All right, growthop.com. Stand corrected. RCMP now say BC dispensary can keep image of Sam Steele in their shop window. Owner Jeff Weaver, otherwise known as Jimmy, I guess, initially agreed to remove the image after speaking with RCMP officer until it was discovered that the uniform was actually a military one. The RCMP are now saying they stand corrected. After a kerfuffle, typically polite Canadian way of putting it, with the dispensary displaying an image of the iconic Mountie Sam Steele in their window. Because Sam Steele would never endorse marijuana use. How do we know? Well, we don't. Jimmy's Cannabis in Cranbrook has been open for just over a week, made headlines after the RCMP cried copyright infringement and asked the shop remove the image of Steele, but as it turns out, upon consultation with the RCMP historian, the Mounties discovered the image depicts Steele in his military uniform and not his RCMP uniform, and is therefore not an infringement. So score 1 for the little guy, I guess. Yeah, I have no idea why I chose McDonald's, Kathy, because yeah, it's not exactly good for you. Maybe that is what one of his medals are. It's shaped like a pot leaf. We're going to look at some pictures of Sam Steele here in a second, and who knows, maybe one of his medals does look like the Sticky Icky. Yeah, we have cranberry sauce with our turkey on Thanksgiving, which is in October instead of November. For Canadian Thanksgiving from Canadian land. Awakening Soldier in a box. N is only used before a word starting with a vowel. But the H also applies when it comes to an. Now that might be different, right? Like that could be like in the US, they might say, "Oh, the hell with that." But I'm telling you, in the Queen's/King's English, and also in Canadian speak, it should be an historian. Now, you wouldn't necessarily pronounce it that way, but that's how it should be spelled to be grammatically correct. That's what my nan told me now, but I'm pretty sure that's true. Anyways, you know what? I got a little video that we can look at. How come Dudley Do-Right wasn't busted for wearing a Mountie uniform? Because that's a good question. Because the whole thing was about the Mounties up in the Yukon. It's an excellent question. Maybe they got permission to use the likeness of the uniform for the Rocky and Bullwinkle cartoon and the Dudley Do-Right segment of that cartoon, maybe? I'm not sure. Yeah, like an historical event. But you might even just say a historical. Oh, that was a historical event or a historical event. But it should be an. Yeah, what I'd say, I'm not an English professor, not a grammar expert. Any of you that have been around here for more than about 15 seconds is well aware of that. So, but anyway, let's quickly look at this YouTube video that I've got. It's one of those what do you call it? Historical heritage minutes on the history of Canada that's sponsored by the government of Canada, just to help educate Canadians about Canada. But obviously it didn't work very well because we still don't know jack squat about Sam Steele. Well, not all of us don't know, but many don't. So let me see here. Get this pulled up for you. Now, hopefully you should be able to hear this as well. So let me just...
Oh, he sits there in his red coat, all spitting polished, and he says,
Where would you be going?
well, I'm going to the Klondike to look at your gold fields, if there really is any.
Not with this.
So can you hear that okay? If you can let me know in the chat, in the box, if you can hear that all right. Please and thank you. Wow, Hippie's right on it. She's on it like fat on Oprah. Yes, audio working fine. Excellent. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Kathy. Appreciate it. Anyways, all right. So here we go. Let's get, this is just short too, eh? It's like 60 seconds, eh? Because that's all it takes to educate an entire nation about what supposedly is one of their greatest historical heroes and figures. And influential.
Oh, he sits there in his red coat, all spitting polished, and he says,
Where would you be going?
well, I'm going to the Klondike to look at your gold fields, if there really is any.
Not with this gambling gear and those revolvers. Men don't wear pistols in Canada.
Canada be damned. I'm going to the Klondike.
The Klondike is Canada. Pack those pistols in your saddlebags or get back to U.S. territory.
Not an unreasonable request. Look, we're not saying you can't bring your pistols into Canadian land. You just can't have them on your person. You got to store them away now. Look, come on now. This ain't the wild frontier now, even though it is. He was just supposedly, by the historical narrative about this Sam Steele fellow, he was trying to, quash some of that stuff and say, let's settle down now, all you wild rootin' tootin' crazy settlers and gold panners and cowboys and pioneers and gunslingers up here, shysters and snake oil salesmen, and all the shenanigans that went on up there. Apparently we didn't like gambling for some reason. That I'm not sure why. Maybe it's just because he knows this guy's here to fix cards games and starts troubles.
Not with this gambling gear and those revolvers. Men don't wear pistols in Canada.
Canada be damned. I'm going to the Klondike.
The Klondike is Canada. Pack those pistols in your saddlebags or get back to U.S. territory.
I'm an American. You can't do this to me.
In that case, I'll be lenient. We'll keep this gambling gear and you'll be back in the United States by sundown.
We'll deport you, you filthy Yank. I'm just joking, by the way. But yeah, apparently he was a hard ass.
He never drew no gun. I could have shot that guy right there. Who was he anyway?
Superintendent Sam Steele of the Northwest Mounted Police.
What?
I like how he had to tell him of the Northwest Mounted Police. Like, this guy hasn't already been told that he's been detained by the Mounties at this point. Oh, you mean tell me you fellas are the Mounties this whole time? Well, why didn't you say so?
Sam Steele of the Northwest Mounted Police.
It's kind of like in those bad Disney Star Wars movies. I think it was the first one where Snoke is talking to Kylo Ren, and he's like, something, your father, Han Solo. It's like, yeah, you don't have to tell the kid whose daddy is. He knows. Ben Solo knows that he's the son of Han Solo. It's the same thing to me.
Steele of the Northwest Mounted Police.
Why didn't I shoot him? Damn.
In the days of the gold rush, a policeman, Sam Steele, became a legend of the Klondike.
I don't know. Why didn't I shoot him?
And by the way, I love how they push the stereotype narrative of the quick to draw, shoot, and delete peoples with the boomsticks Americans, right? The hot-headed, ignorant, loud-mouthed American who's going to come up here with his pistols, and at the first sign of trouble, he's just going to fill somebody full of lead. And as if that wasn't already going on up here in Canada around that same time anyways. It's just that it was real bad up there and getting out of control. So they sent this basically paramilitary version of a police force up there to kind of tell everybody, hey, just take it easy up here. So they kind of made the Americans out to be the villain in that little 60-second vignette. Canada isn't a country. It's a corporation like all other countries. Well, yes, that is true. It's a crown corporation. So there you go, a quick little vignette regarding Sam Steele. And while we're on the path of looking at little videos here, we're basically halfway mark, just a little beyond halfway mark of the show here. So I think I'm going to take a little bit of a break and going to give you a sneak peek at your midweek coming up here for for Wednesday vintage footage video. And as a reminder, or if you're new to the channel, every Wednesday you get vintage footage video. And for every live, I give you a little bit of a sneak peek of that. So this one coming up on the 24th, Wednesday. And this one is footage from 1929. It's the old Ford Motor Company factory, but up here in Canadian land. because I guess old Henry decided to open up a couple of plants up here too. So yeah, this is excuse me, pardon me. This is 1929 Ford motor plant. It's about 6 minutes long, 6.5 minutes. And again, smoke them if you got them, and throw on some headphones, because we got one of the iconic Canadian bands on this for this one. So stick around, and I will be back in about 6.5. Thanks for joining me. Cheers. All right, and we are back. Hi, everyone. Frankie here, New West Reset. New West Reset live episode 75 here on this Friday, July the 29th, 2024. Sneaking up on a half past the hour here, half past 6 p.m. local time. That's mountain time here in Calgary and Purdy, Alberta, Canada. Thank you and welcome to the show. Thanks for joining me here. The Storied Saga of Sam Steele. Links in the description below for everything we looked at the top half of the show. Wikipedia and a quick little YouTube video from a government-sponsored propaganda. Video. And, some other wacky stuff. Canadian flavor to it. A little bit to do with, the sweet leaf and whatnot in British Columbia, Canada, and the Mounties and imagery and so on. Pretty interesting, to say the least. And we just looked at some video footage, old Ford factory. And in Windsor, I believe. In Windsor. Thanks for joining me here on the show. Thanks for kicking off your weekend here with me. It's Friday, don't you know? So I've got, it's not a very large file, but I've got a few photos of Mr. Steele himself and some of the forts that he was stationed at, supposedly, which there's like 8 of them or something. I'm like, wow, this guy was everywhere up here, eh, buddy? Like, what the heck? Anyway. Let's see what I've got here. Let's see what's going on. There was a comment earlier in the box, in the chat, about the photo from the thumbnail. He was looking pretty badass. And the uniform. I don't know who came up with the uniform. I actually haven't looked into that, but whoever came up with the uniform, because it's based on a military uniform. And like they said in I think a couple of the articles we looked at, a lot of the military uniforms were the same, especially in, under the Crown, the British Commonwealth. You have the red coats, right? The red coats, man. The Mounties' official formal dress is still the red coat with the navy blue trousers with the yellow stripe and those Smokey the Bear hats. Which, by the way, I love those hats. I think I've mentioned that in the last couple of live streams when we were looking at old photos of cowboys, and a lot of them weren't wearing what you would think of as the cowboy hat. They were wearing old-timey Western hats, but they weren't, the modern Stetson cowboy hat that you all think of. And many of them wore that Smokey the Bear, Lord Baden-Powell hat. And I kind of dig those. I want to give me one of them hats, I think. Anyways, we're also talking about in the chat that many of us, I think, are from the same generation. Yeah, I was born in 1970, so I think a lot of us are Gen Xers or baby boomers, I would think. Sort of between the ages of 40 and 70, but more around 50 to 60, 65-ish. Train going by in the background. If you didn't hear it blasting through the microphone. Anyways, let's have a look. See what we're looking at here. For the photographs. These are kind of sort of not really in any particular order. Basically, youngest to oldest in age for and I should correct myself, for Sir Sam Steele of the Northwest Mounted Police, the Mounties, later the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. That's what they're known as now, the RCMP. So now I'm not really sure what's going on with this photo because I don't know if this has been laser printed on canvas to be mounted on a wall, or if this is silk screened or printed fabric. But it's obviously not a photograph. Like, it's a photograph, but it's been put on something that's textured. I want to go with, a guy's gonna go out on a limb here, stick his neck out and say this is a canvas, like as if that you were going to paint on, but instead they had this image printed on. But yeah, it's kind of a cool uniform. You know, it's probably got a lot of the usual symbology. This looks like a ship for some reason, which is weird because he wasn't in the Navy. Two-headed dragon or two-headed serpent. This is belt enclosure. I wish I could see more clearly the buttons. It looks to me like that's a crown. Again, you'll have to excuse the quality of the photo. Sir Real Nil Mill in the box. 54 and in better shape than 70% of Americana, apparently. And on par with another 18+%. Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking. I'm 54 as well, so, you know. Yeah, Sage is 54. Sage is in great shape, too, by the way. Vinny's got a couple of years on me. Actually, Awakening Soldier is actually in good physical condition as well. And when I say in good shape, good mental shape, too, because that's another thing. That's important. Where am I? There. That's important. You talk about exercise and healthy diet and staying active and all that. Sure. Absolutely. But also, and two, you know, your gray matter, your brain pan. You want your brain pan to have a healthy diet and get lots of exercise as well. So there's the hat I'm talking about, the Smokey the Bear, Lord Baden-Powell, Boy Scout hat. Cool looking hat. It keeps the sun off of you. Especially when the last couple of weeks here, we've been in the low to mid 30s Celsius, which is the high 80s to low 90s Fahrenheit. But yeah, these uniforms are pretty practical, right? This belt, you got your sidearm and your ammo and a bunch of other stuff, probably your sword, your knife, all kinds of stuff on your belt. So it starts to pull down. So you wear suspenders or braces to hold your belt up. But now you don't want your suspenders or your braces sliding off your shoulder now. So you got an epaulette that buttons over it. And also you can take your gloves off and slide them under there too. These days, cops put their little talkie thing in there. But you know what I'm saying? Very practical. Got his boots because he's a cavalry division, right? So that would explain the sword too, I guess. Obviously a professional portrait. But the uniform has not changed much. I think now it's across the shoulder single to hold the belt up as opposed to the double suspenders or braces. Not the fanciest, but very military looking. Yeah, this guy looks like you don't want to start any nonsense with this guy. You do not want to start nonsense with him. This obviously not his police uniform. This is a military uniform, but it's much older here, right? I think I may have mixed up some of these because I do have some for where he's in his police uniform and he's older. But I mean, he left the cops and then came back to the cops, right? So can't zoom in too much on this one. It gets pretty pickleated, but yeah, really fancy, right? Obviously that these guys didn't wear these into battle, or did they? Now, I think a lot of these uniforms are either based on pre-modern most recent reset uniforms, old world uniforms. You know, if you figure that the most recent reset is there in about between 1700 and 1850-ish, I've heard that date thrown around. Personally, I don't know. This is all speculation for me, but it seems like they either found and reused a bunch of those old uniforms, or based post-reset uniforms on pre-reset uniforms. Who knows? This entire guy could be fictitious. This could be photos they found and they made up the name Sam Steele, or they repurposed the old Sam Steele, attributed it to this guy. Said, oh, yeah, this guy was a Mountie in Canada. He helped, relax all the wild shenanigans up in the wild root and toot and Klondike of the Yukon up there. No idea what some kind of fastening for this jacket. You can see it's got the fastening here. It's little metal loops and clips, probably brass. I guess this would be to cover that. Maybe this, there's slits or slots, so one can cross over the other and attach to these toggle buttons. I don't know what's going on here. Very busy. But again, those braided epaulets. I think this is a Mountie uniform. Yeah, the twirled, waxed mustachio. This might be a better shot of a similar photograph. Not sure what this is. It's rolled up scroll, or I don't know what that is, but okay. Now, again, this is his military uniform, I think, not the police uniform. It's very tough. Now, this I know. This I'm pretty sure is cops. This I think's military, because it's with the sword, it's the cavalry, I think, which he was a member of. But now he's wearing a Napoleon, what I call like a Napoleon style hat with the feathers on the top, This is definitely military, because he's got all kinds of symbolic, did what we told you to badges, right? This is Mounties. This is cops. Much more simplified uniform. Still very military looking. But this is the cops. This might be cops too, not military. I don't know. It's so confusing and muddled, and they're not labeled well online. And there's really not a lot of photos of him actually online, considering how much of a big deal he supposedly was. Not a lot of photos of this guy. So this is Fort Garry, which later became Winnipeg, I believe. Anyway, this is one of the forts that Sir Sam Steele was stationed at when he was with the Northwest Mounted Police. Now, some of these forts are attributed to the Northwest Mounted Police in terms of being built by. But there's also confusion with the forts, because there's some forts that are the Hudson's Bay Company, the Hudson's Bay Fur Trading Company. It's forts that are attributed to them building them. But the RCMP were stationed either there or nearby. So they're saying, well, the Mounties didn't build all of these forts now. Some of these fur trading company folks built these forts, but then the Mounties were there to protect the fort. But the Hudson's Bay Trading Company had its own sort of paramilitary force that would protect the forts too, that weren't the Mounties. So you see, and then the railroads come through, And then some cops go to work for the railroad because the railroad also had their own police force. Like, it's just crazy. Like, CP Rail had its own cops. Anyway, parts of this fort looking much older than other parts of the fort. And also, it looks like it's built with some shenanigans going on here. But, you know, par for the course, I guess. This is Fort Garry from the air in this photo was taken in the 20s. The other one was taken in the 1878. So you can see at this point they've removed some structures, but they've kept some within the fort walls. And again, you can see how there's funny business here and all along here. I don't know. These walls look very short. Like, what are you protecting with a 6-foot wall or an 8-foot wall? Like, normally at forts that they bother to build that have turrets and everything, and in their own narrative say is to protect stuff from stuff, or protect things from peoples, or protect people from people, or to protect people from stuff. You'd think that the walls would be a little higher. So this to me, and the ground is sloping here and all wonky. I'm thinking this is part of just a semi-buried star fort. The Mounties just came along. Who knows? Sir Sam Steele himself could have been on his hoss, just riding around in here, and just came across this shit. And oh yeah, we built it. This is Fort Carleton. It's a photo taken in 1871. Now, this is a little more believable. It's supposedly a wooden fort. Okay. Now you're talking. Because the police just ride out here with their own supplies, and they got to build this fort themselves. I mean, there's supposedly nobody out here, but wild rootin' tootin' Wild West. So out here, there's nothing but they're wild savages, them red Indians. Maybe a few stalwart fur traders and pioneers, but basically American rum runners and bootleggers and wild Indians, and maybe some gold prospectors and stuff. So I guess the cops are patrolling the area, and they don't send out hundreds. I mean, this is the early time of the RCMP, the Northwest Mounted Police. So they only had a couple of hundred for the entire police force at this point. Not thousands of men yet. So they're only sending about a dozen fellas out to to patrol an area. So they got to build a fort and patrol at the same time. I don't know. Definitely not building stone forts. This is that Fort Capel. What is now, I believe, Saskatchewan? Correct me in the box. It was either Saskatchewan or Montreal. So built some of these buildings are like semicircular. There's all kinds of geometric craziness going on here. And then all these hills, these actually could have been the original Star Fort walls that have been buried. And they excavate and find out what it is, and then they come in and they build their temporary buildings, and their timber buildings, I should say, and they claim all this. Again, just speculating. Because this is Fort Steele, so his namesake, and it's basically a bunch of wooden log that have been milled shacks. And we've seen stuff like this at Heritage Park, didn't we, Cousin Vinny? Sam Livingston's, apparently his pioneer farmhouse, ranch house, was built of these milled timbered logs. A 2-story. So this I can buy, but you'd think the most extravagant fort would be his namesake. I think I have a couple of pictures of Fort Steele. Yeah, this is when it was just a ferry, and the town and the fort was called so-and-so's Ferry, and it later became Fort Steele. Again, this is kind of more what I could expect. This is the Northwest Mounted Police Camp. Fort Walsh, 1878. So it's funny how he was sent to some quote-unquote wooden forts. This to me looks more like one of those Hudson's Bay Company fur trading forts, or what we told they are. It was a wooden fort that had wooden towers. Like this. Again, the recreation of the Hudson's Bay fur trading fort that's in Heritage Park looks like this. It didn't look like a star fort. Like here's Fort Calgary even. I have here, hang on a sec. You get this photo of the fort with some teepees and some Indians and some soldiers and horses all in front of it. And they say, okay, this was a Fort Walsh. This was a Mountie fort. Sam Steele had been here. Sam Steele done been here too, Fort Calgary, with a wooden fort with a bunch of cops and Indians and horses in front of it. And this photo looks totally doctored. I mean, staged, yes. You know, hey, everybody, get in front of here. We're going to take a picture of the fort to make it official. So they get a few cops on their horses and a few indigenous peoples that were here trading or maybe were camped around the fort or whatever. And they all get in front. They even get a dog and they'll pose for the picture. But it looks like it's pen and ink touched up, or a collage, or an overlay of different negatives. It just looks so... There's another dog here, but this dog definitely looks painted in. The boots look painted in. These indigenous folks don't even really look real almost. They look like they're painted in also. Like it just looks like it's a cut and paste. But supposedly this was taken in 1878. First photo taken of Calgary. The fort. The composition of which is very similar to this. But instead of the photograph being taken from way back here at this point of view, and the fort's in the distance, instead the photographer supposedly is just standing right in front of it and boom, taking a photo. So he's standing right here, basically. I don't know. It just seems very... This is the first photograph taken in Calgary? What a piece of shit. I'm sorry. Excuse my language, but anyways, this is Fort Dufferin in Manitoba. This supposedly was another fort that he was stationed at. The Mounted Police Force, Mounted Police Force Fort. Again, my apologies. This isn't a photo. I think it's a sketch, actually, but a rendering. It's a picture, but not a photo. This is a photo. This is Fort Ellis. I think this is in Ontario. You know, it's in Canada because there's snow, eh? Like this guy was everywhere. This is Fort Haines. This is actually technically in Alaska, but there's some territorial disputes at one point, apparently. This looks like it's laid out like it's very big. Yeah, that's right. Some of them could be wood carving, prints. Yeah, that's true. This is Fort Henry in Ontario. Now, if this doesn't scream a piece of star fort that's been uncovered, I don't know what does. Especially considering it's right on the water. This whole thing is probably one big star fort. Now, this photo is taken from 1920, but all of these forts were built between the 1870s and 80s to the very, very, very early 1900, they say, 1902, but pretty much 1870s, 1880s. Fort McLeod. Now, Fort McLeod is now a city, but same narrative as Calgary and many other towns. It was founded by the Mounties, and eventually a town sprung up around the fort or the police outpost. And now, as a reminder, this is the Royal Northwest Mounted Police Barracks in Fort McLeod, Alberta. These are all forts that Sam Steele has been to or was stopped on his way going from one fort to another or was stationed at one point or another. Well, that's the other thing, too, is the pictures are either very posed, where they've got quote-unquote Indians, dogs, horses, and Mounties in front of the fort, or there's nobody. And it seems like a lot of these aerial view or views from further back, you don't see anybody. But the older photos, we got to get them horses and cops out in front of the fort. And throw in a couple of indigenous folks, too, for good measure. This is Fort Whoop Up. Yes, Whoop Up. Whoop Up is a local prairie term for a celebratory gathering of indigenous peoples, often tribes from the same nation, or sometimes meetings between different friendly nations that traded amongst one another. And these were called whoop-ups. And there was, food and dance and song and trade, and the elders would exchange ideas and exchange news. And, at least from what I'm told, I'm not indigenous. I'm a European descended paleface. But this is what I've been told by local indigenous peoples that I know, and also the quote-unquote experts and historians and whatnot. But yeah, this is old Fort Whoop Up near Lethbridge. So southern Alberta. Down there, that part used to be part of the old Louisiana territory, believe it or not, prior to the Louisiana Purchase. Real close to the American border today in modern times. Now, this is a cops fort instead of a Hudson's Bay fur trading company fort, because I don't see any bay blankets. Those are the off-white, cream-colored blankets with the black, red, yellow, green, and blue stripe, but spaced apart so that the background shows through. That's right, Sig. The Calgary Exhibition and Stampede, the greatest outdoor show on earth. Talked about that last week and the week before. I'm kind of weaning myself off of the cowboy-themed live streams by doing two of them in a row. By doing this now, this is sort of Wild West, but it's up in the Klondike, and it's more about Sam Steele and the Mounties more so than cowboys. Just throwing some of these forts in for good measure. And this one, I just threw this in because I love it. So this is your typical Hudson's Bay Company fur trading Company fort, outpost, as an ambulance goes by. But I love this photo because it's at the base of what is Alberta's capital, and this is Capitol Hill, and this is our Capitol building here in Edmonton, the Edmonton Legislature building. And these were built roughly around the same time. This fort may be built 15, 20 years maybe before this supposedly was built. So I just love this photo, that this is the world's, what we were told is the world's oldest still operating company, the Hudson's Bay Company. And this is their fur trading outpost fort. And the cops would have been here too. The Mounties would have been here too. And this is in the background. Well, that's the thing, is I think majority, 51, 52% of the company is owned by American shareholding companies and conglomerates. So it's no longer a 100% Canadian company. Yeah. But it never was a quote unquote Canadian company, right? It's just a branch of the other big realm wide, what we're told were trading companies, right? Like the Dutch East India Company and so on and so forth. Yeah, they just wanted to trade tea and spices and whatnot. They weren't doing anything nefarious. Same as the Mounties out in western Canada land in the prairies and up in the Yukon. They weren't doing anything nefarious. Sometimes it's all we get when we're looking for a fort, a Northwest Mounted Police fort. This is categorized as a fort. This is Fort Nomandou in, I believe, Quebec, Montreal, if I'm not mistaken. But it's basically, again, one of those milled beam log cabins with the groove, the notch. I'm sorry, the name escapes me, that thing. It's been a while since I built me a log cabin. But the notches, right? Way out here in the wild frontier. So where's the mill? By the way, it's a chicken and egg thing, which came first, right? Because you got to have the Mounties go out there to keep an eye on stuff and establish a camp and later a fort, supposedly, so that if they could build their own mill, let's say. But in order to build the camp and the establishment, you got to kind of have a mill. So, you know. But yeah, a cabin or a cluster of cabins is considered a fort a lot of times. Now they'll say, oh, this is all that remained of quote unquote Fort Nomandou. There's this and a couple of other buildings that look like this, you know, within, 20 feet of each other. And it's like, okay. But some of them are categorized as an outpost. Like this, for example, is writing on stone, Northwest Mounted Police post. Writing on stone is also in the southern prairies. And this looks really odd to me. These doors look like they're slightly below ground level. These windows look really low. But then there's this weirdo stone, I guess what looks like a foundation, but it extends past the building. I just don't know what the hell's going on here. But anyway, writing on stone in itself is a very interesting part of the country, but that basically warrants its own video, really. I think that's the last one in this file. Yeah. Just looks funny looking. Well, yeah, how did they get the building materials out here? Like, because again, they're sent out here to protect the indigenous peoples and just to protect the region and the land from like early Canadians, which basically is like British colonists, basically, right? We're paranoid. at least by the official narrative, were paranoid that the Americans were constantly going to be trying to come into Canada land, trying to get British Columbia, Alberta, and Saskatchewan by coming in from the south, right? Coming in from what's now Montana and Idaho, Washington State. You know, by way of some of the American Midwest states. For some reason, they're scared shitless. And also we're told that the indigenous native, American Indians, were getting into fights with, the United States Army, the cavalry or whatever, but then they would run across the border into Canada because, hey, we're indigenous people, so we can do that. And the military couldn't. So then they had to enlist some American military to get their help and do a big coordination thing. And then by the time they went out to where they thought the Indians were hiding out in Canada, by then they've gone back across the border in the US, and it was just a big goofy thing. But yeah, this building just looks weird to me. But yeah, that whole story, very, very strange. I kind of quickly wanted to just kind of look at the Northwest Mounted Police Wikipedia, because there's something that I thought was interesting about it here. I'm just trying to remember. There it is. Okay. Yeah, I was trying to remember where I saw it. So this is the Northwest Mounted Police page for Wikipedia, which you can get to by clicking on the link in the description below for the for Sam Steele, anyways, the Sam Steele Wikipedia page. So apparently, the establishment of the Northwest Mounted Police, later the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, it took about a year to kind of get all the kinks worked out, and they were formed. Okay, so Sir John A. Macdonald, Canada's first prime minister, Canada's version of the president, right? He gets approval for his new force on May 23rd, 1873. He's got to get approval from the Crown. So after Parliament, following a cursory debate, passed the Mounted Police Act into law unopposed. At this point, Macdonald, that's Sir John A. Macdonald, appears to have intended to create a force of mounted police to watch the frontier from Manitoba to the foot of the Rocky Mountains, probably with its headquarters in Winnipeg. He was heavily influenced by the model of the Royal Irish Constabulary. And you can see I clicked on that because I was like, wait, what? First of all, I didn't know what the Royal Irish Constabulary was. I figured it was a police force in the region of Ireland that was still part of the United Kingdom and not independent Ireland. And forgive my sheltered Canadian knowledge of the whole Ireland versus North Ireland and all that sort of thing. Even though it's all part of the the British narrative, as a Canadian, at least for me personally, I don't have a lot of knowledge about that. But just from what I could tell here, right? So I was like, well, wait a second. How does a Canadian prime minister who needs some kind of police force to protect the newly acquired western regions in Canada, right? He's got to protect them with some kind of police force. So he's got to create this thing from the ground up, supposedly, and then send them out there. But he's a Canadian prime minister, and he's based it on an Irish constabulary. So this is weird, right? So they combine aspects of a traditional military unit with the judicial functions of the magistrates, courts. So he believed that the new force should be able to provide a local system of government in otherwise ungoverned areas. So the cops weren't just you break the law and we're going to get you and detain you, deport you, fine you, whatever. But we are the ruling governmental body. So the cops are the police and the judge. It's like Judge Dredd all up in here. It's the Wild West Canadian Judge Dredd. And the Wild Irish Judge Dredd, I guess. It's weird. So originally, MacDonald also wanted to form his units of Métis policemen, commanded by white Canadian officers in a similar manner to the British Indian Army. But he was forced to abandon this approach after the Red River Rebellion of 1870 called their loyalty into question. Yeah. Basically, the Métis got kind of hornswoggled by the government, and they had a rebellion, which was quashed by the Mounties, and what later became the Canadian Army. So yeah, after that, he's like, yeah, okay, we're not going to have Métis cops, I guess. Yeesh. So he had 30 members of the Assiniboine First Nation that were killed in the Cypress Hills Massacre. Assiniboine, Saskatchewan, the most fun province in Canada to pronounce, and a favorite here on the channel. Saskatchewan, Canada, used to be known as Assiniboine because it was the home of the Assiniboine peoples. Anyways, there's 30 of them killed in the Cypress Hills Massacre. So he created this national force. In response, MacDonald used a privy council in order to enact new legislation, formally creating the police mobilizing force, deploying it earlier in the next year. Yada, yada, yada. So I just thought that was really weird, this Royal Irish Constabulary. It was a police force in Ireland from 1822 until 1922, when all the island was part of the United Kingdom. Oh, so before they split it. A separate civic police force, the unarmed Dublin Metropolitan Police, patrolled the capital and parts of County Wicklow, while the cities of Derry and Belfast, originally with their own police forces, later had special divisions within the RIC. Most history, the ethnic and religious makeup of the RIC broadly matched that of the Irish population, although Anglo-Irish Protestants were overrepresented. Yeah, okay, whatever. So this Canadian Prime Minister in the 1870s based his, what would basically be the country's or the national police force, on a police force in Ireland that was started in the 1820s. It just seems weird. I mean, if we think about it in today's context, sure. I mean, it's easy. You could just go on the interwebs and Google something and find out about it. But how does he know about that? You know, as a young politician at this point, well, early-ish in his career at this point, as a Canadian politician, way over in Canadanedia land, you know? Just seemed strange to me. But the thing also is that Sir Johnny MacDonald wasn't even Irish or of Irish descent. He was Scottish. So maybe you can do mental cheetah flips and hand wave his knowledge of the Irish constabulary by saying, well, he was Scottish. He was born in Scotland. You know, even though he was a boy when they immigrated to Kingston, Ontario. So I'm like, well, I don't know. That doesn't do it. But anyways, he established the Northwest Mounted Police, and aside from William Lyon Mackenzie King, he was the first prime minister, and he served 19 years. So one of the longest serving. Basically, when Canada was formed, by the Northwest Territories and Rupert's Land being turned over to Canada, and then British Columbia and Prince Edward Island joining what was Upper and Lower Canada, later basically Quebec and Ontario, they formed the Confederation of Canadian Provinces. Supposedly. And as things started to expand westward, that familiar old narrative, right? Things were getting out of hand in the Yukon, so we had to get these cops put together based on the Irish cops. Because you gotta keep out the Yankees. Fear the United States military marching in and trying to take stuff. So I don't know. Very strange. So I also put a link in the box of Northwest Mounted Police Forts, which is the Wikipedia page for that. And as mentioned, Sam Steele had an association with every single one of the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 of them. Either being stationed there, staying there, passing through there, training the police or the cops, the mounted patrols there, whatever the case may be. Heck, I didn't even realize that Sam Steele had been here in Calgary for a while. I knew he was up in northern Alberta, up near Edmonton and beyond here in Alberta, but I didn't even realize he was in Calgary. But apparently, yeah, Fort Calgary. So, So yeah, I put a link in the description below for that as well. Morgan's here. Howdy, Morgan. Good to see you. Thank you for shooting in. Morgan from Isabella Live 2.0. So yeah, I kind of found that interesting, and I kind of think that there's too much in... I mean, I understand that throughout history, there's always been great men and great women who accomplished multiple times more than your average Joe Schmo or Jane Schmo walking down the street. You know. But some of this is just too much. There's just too much for one person in one lifetime to have accomplished. Especially when his daddy had the same name, or his uncle had the same name. His daddy was a military man. Most of his family were in the military. And admittedly, I think it was on the Wikipedia, they said that his son became a writer and embellished much of his dad's stories and made up stuff about him to make him seem like the mighty Sam Steele of the Northwest Mounted Police, the Mounties up in the wild Yukon. Not taking no guff from nobody. Not taking no guff from no quick shooting, rootin', tootin', hot-headed Americans now up here trying to take all our gold and our land. He ain't putting up with no guff. Watch out for that there Sam Steele. Sam Steele comes along and he's like, I'm not going to mess around up here, eh, bud? Like, we don't play around up here, eh? Like, don't mistake our polite kindness for weakness there, eh, buddy? I'm a barrel-chested, mustache-twirling, Wild West rootin' tootin' son of a gun now. You know? Anyways, very interesting, but I think most of it is, I don't know. Most of it is, in my opinion, they've attributed or made up stuff and they've added it to the narrative. He did all this. Well, yeah, okay. We're just expected to ignore the fact that his son made up stuff about his dad, so that his dad could become like larger than life, like a legend, like a living legend. Like when you think the Mounties, you think the red-coated guys with the Smokey the Bear hats. And in a lot of cases, Sam Steele embodies that image. He was one of the earliest. He was like the fourth officer to be sworn in. as a cop. I think that was what they said. I don't know. And then from there, it was just, well, actually, no, he accomplished a bunch of stuff before that. He was in the Boer War and all this other stuff and, kinds of battles with wild Indians and whatnot. Then he became a cop. Then he came out and became a soldier again. And then he went back to being a cop again. No nonsense. Tougher than nails, Sam Steele. Right? Yeah. Just like Realm Dweller said earlier, does he have that name because he was tough, basically, or is he tough because of the name? Kind of like that Johnny Cash song about a boy named Sue. His daddy named him Sue to make him tough. Gave him a girl's name to make him rough and tough. With a name like Sam Steele, if he was a shrinking violet, I guess it would be pretty ironic, right? Well, there's always that too, right? The play on words. Sam Steele, S-T-E-A-L. Marching into territories and quote unquote building forts. And because the RCMP basically made and then enforced the rules, they were the government and they were the lawmakers and the law enforcers. Yeah. Could pretty much take and go and do whatever they wanted to do, right? So kind of a scary story if you just do a little bit of even cursory poking around in the storied saga of Sam Steele. Sir Sam Steele, I stand corrected. Sir Sam Steele. So I think I'm getting ready to wind this thing down. And just as a reminder, before I go off the air here, this is the guy's penultimate live stream, the second to last live stream. Not for good now. Not for good now. Just the last on a Friday. Starting in July, or in August, sorry, at the end of July, starting in August. Gonna flip it to Sundays for the show, for the live show. Just because my schedule on Fridays, especially as of late, seems to be very hinky-jinky. And often I have to work later than I kind of wanted to. So I kind of did a quick informal vote, not really a poll, but a vote, just in the box in the chat a couple of weeks ago, and most folks were like, "Yeah, Sunday, it's fine. Yeah, no problem, no problem." So we'll be doing another live on the 26th, Friday, the 26th of July. And then for August 2nd, Friday, August 2nd, in August, on the 2nd, the Friday will be a boots on the ground. And the live will be on the 4th, the Sunday, August the 4th. So as much as I hate jumping around, that seems to be the consensus. And also because I don't, as much as I say I hate jumping around, it's not so much that as I don't like going on too late. It's not late for me. Like going on at 7 p.m. is not late for me. I mean, it's just in the evening, right? It's no big whoop. I can go earlier on a Sunday once in a while too, is the thing, you see. So I could start at, I could do a nooner, or I could start at like 2 p.m. once in a while or something. But I like to keep it around 4 or 5 p.m. local time, mountain time, right? Seems to be a good time for everybody. But if I wanted to bounce around different time slots and so on and so forth, because, time zones and all that crap, right? I'd much rather push the show earlier and do an earlier start to include more folks from everywhere rather than later. Because it gets to be too late / too early for some folks, like 2 or 3 in the morning. That's late, man. Like, come on. Like, I appreciate people tuning in and watching a guy at like, shooting in at like 3 or 4 a.m. their local time. But wow. I mean, if you're up, you're up. It's great. So yeah, keep your ocular sphericals hooked onto the channel here just for updates and whatnot. Of course, do all the other, the stuff down there that you've heard a million times that people ask you to do. And all them other they're good things. And with that, I think that's going to seal the deal here for Frankie. New West Reset and New West Reset Live, episode 75. The storied saga of Sir Sam Steele of the Northwest Mounted Police, the Mounties, Dudley Do-Right himself, I guess. Again, for links for everything in the description below, as well as a fellow's email, MeWe, BitChute, Rumble, my location map on Google's, on the Goggle machine, and of course, on the PayPal. So thanks to everybody in the chat, in the box. Really appreciate it. Thank you to everybody who's shooting in and joining the fella after the fact. Appreciate your support as well. Maybe say howdy to a guy down below and all that stuff. If you haven't already, consider giving a guy one of these or one of these. And thanks again to everybody who subscribed and shared. All the support, really, really appreciate it. So there you go. Until the next one, take care out there and have yourselves a good one. We shall see you Sunday, boots on the ground, Wednesday, vintage footage, and back here next week live. Take care, everyone. Cheers.
It's a mystery. It's a mystery wrapped in a riddle inside an enigma.